Chapter 15: Principles and Theory of the Gold Standard. 1. Defining the Orthodox Gold Standard. The Orthodox Gold Standard was not merely a financial policy, it was the secular religion of the 19th century economic world. To define it is to describe a system where a nation's currency is tethered by an unbreakable legal umbilical cord to a specific physical quantity of gold. In its purest, most orthodox form, often referred to as the classical period, 1880 to 1914, the standard operated as a self-regulating international ecosystem. It was a world where a sovereign's promise was not backed by faith and credit, but by the cold, heavy reality of the yellow metals sitting in a subterranean vault. At its core, the Orthodox Gold Standard rested upon three golden pillars that allowed it to function as a global stabilizer. First, full convertibility. Any citizen could walk into a bank with a paper note and demand its equivalent in gold coin. This ensured that paper money was never perceived as an abstraction, but as a warehouse receipt for a physical asset. Second, unrestricted movement. Gold could be imported or exported across borders without tariffs or government interference. This made gold the global citizen, flowing naturally to where it was most valued, acting as a pressure valve for international trade. Third, the Mint Parity. The government stood ready to buy or sell gold at a fixed statutory price. This transformed the national mint into an automated machine. If you brought raw dust from Nome or the Rand, the state was legally obligated to strike it into coin at a predetermined ratio. The Orthodox Gold Standard was the apotheosis of monetary logic. It removed the power of money printing from the hands of impulsive politicians and gave it to the impartial geological limits of the earth. Under this regime, the world experienced a level of price stability and integrated trade that seems almost mythological by modern standards. It was a period where a British sovereign, a French franc, and a German mark were essentially the same thing, different names for the same weight of gold. To the Orthodox theorist, gold was the invariable yardstick, the only thing in a world of shifting political winds that remained stubbornly, gloriously physical and finite. 2. The monetary unit, a fixed weight versus a fixed value. The most profound and often misunderstood principle of the gold standard was the legal definition of the monetary unit. In a modern fiat system, a dollar or a pound is defined by its value, what it can buy in a fluctuating market. However, under the gold standard, the monetary unit was defined strictly as a fixed weight of fine gold. For example, by the Gold Standard Act of 1900, the United States dollar was legally defined not as a symbol of value, but as 25.8 grains of gold 9/10 fine, resulting in 23.22 grains of pure gold. This distinction is the cornerstone of monetary orthodoxy. The government did not set the price of gold, it defined the size of its currency by it. This led to a radical philosophical shift in how wealth was perceived. If the dollar is a fixed weight, then inflation and deflation are not merely market trends, but changes in the purchasing power of that specific weight of metal relative to other goods. When we say the price of wheat rose, an orthodox theorist would argue that the value of gold had fallen relative to wheat, while the weight of the dollar remained immutable. This provided an invariable scale of measurement. Just as a meter is a fixed length of physical matter and a kilogram is a fixed mass, the dollar, or the sovereign, was a fixed physical constant. This fixed weight principle removed the element of human caprice from the economy. Because the government could not stretch the weight of a grain of gold, it could not arbitrarily increase the money supply to pay off debts or fund wars without physically acquiring more metal. This created a temporal stability. A contract signed in 1880 for $100 meant exactly the physical quantity of gold in 1910. By tethering the abstract concept of money to the physical laws of mass, the gold standard provided a linguistic and mathematical certainty to international trade, turning the world's various currencies into a single unified language of weight. 3. Physical suitability, durability, divisibility, and homogeneity. For a substance to serve as the universal equivalent for all other goods and services, it must possess specific physical virtues that transcend time and geography. While various civilizations experimented with silver, copper, or even seashells, gold emerged as the supreme victor. Not because of its beauty, but because of its chemical and physical indifference to the world around it. The selection of gold was a process of natural economic selection, where the metal's unique properties made it the only material capable of bearing the immense psychological and structural weight of the global standard. The first virtue is durability. Gold is virtually indestructible. It does not rust, tarnish, or decay. The gold panned by a 49er in the Sierra Nevada or a Viking trader 1,000 years ago remains exactly the same today. This immortality is essential for a store of value. A farmer cannot use wheat as a permanent currency because it rots. But gold allows labor performed today to be frozen and stored for decades. Secondly, gold possesses perfect homogeneity. Unlike diamonds, where no two stones are identical in clarity or cut, 1 ounce of pure gold is exactly identical to any other ounce of pure gold. This allows for a universal language of value, where gold is gold, regardless of whether it was mined in the Arctic or the Transvaal. Furthermore, gold's divisibility and high value-to-weight ratio made it the perfect medium for an expanding industrial world. It can be melted down and divided into tiny fractions or cast into massive bars without losing its intrinsic value. A small pouch of gold dust could represent a man's lifetime of labor, making it portable enough to be carried across oceans, yet heavy enough to prevent the trivial printing of wealth. In the eyes of the 19th century economist, gold was the perfect monetary canvas, a substance that was rare enough to be precious, but common enough to be measurable, providing a physical foundation that was as stable as the periodic table itself. 4. Parity and convertibility, the mechanism of stability. The true genius of the gold standard lay in its ability to act as an automated global thermostat. This was achieved through the twin principles of parity and convertibility. Parity established the fixed exchange rate between nations. For instance, since the British pound and the US dollar were both defined by weights of gold, the exchange rate was locked at roughly $4.86 per pound. Convertibility was the guarantee that any holder of paper currency could at any moment demand that weight in physical metal. Together, these principles created the price-specie flow mechanism, an invisible hand that balanced the world's trade without the need for a central global authority. The mechanism functioned with the cold logic of physics. If a country, for example the United States, imported more goods than it exported, it would have to pay for that deficit by shipping physical gold abroad. This outflow of specie would decrease the domestic money supply. According to the quantity theory of money, a smaller money supply leads to lower domestic prices. As American goods became cheaper, they became more attractive to foreign buyers, while expensive foreign imports became less attractive to Americans. Eventually, the flow of trade would reverse. Gold would flow back into the U.S. vaults, and the equilibrium would be restored. This was a self-correcting miracle. It meant that a nation could not perpetually live beyond its means or suffer from runaway inflation without losing its gold reserves and being forced into fiscal discipline. The gold standard did not just measure wealth, it enforced international honesty. Convertibility was the ultimate check on the arrogance of governments. The knowledge that a citizen could walk into the bank and drain the gold reserves acted as a silent, powerful veto against irresponsible monetary expansion. It was a system of absolute accountability, where the physical movement of bars across the Atlantic did the work that modern economists now struggle to achieve with complex algorithms and interest rate hikes. 5. The market for gold, fixed prices, and unlimited demand. The most striking paradox of the gold standard era was the existence of a market with fixed prices and unlimited demand. For any other commodity, be it wheat from the Central Valley or copper from the Butte mines, a massive new discovery would inevitably lead to a market glut, driving prices down and forcing producers to scale back. Gold, however, operated outside this gravitational pull of supply and demand. Because the government's mint was legally bound to buy every ounce of gold presented to it at a fixed statutory rate, such as $20.67 per ounce in the U.S., the price of gold could never fall, no matter how much was produced. This created a unique economic incentive for the prospectors of the Klondike and Nome. They were the only entrepreneurs in the world who faced zero market risk. They did not have to worry about finding a buyer or the market being oversaturated by their competitors. Whether they found 10 ounces or 10,000, the Treasury was their guaranteed bottomless customer. This turned gold mining into a purely extractive race. The only variables were the cost of labor and the difficulty of the terrain. The reward was a mathematical certainty. This unlimited demand had a profound effect on global expansion. Since gold could always be exchanged for its face value in currency, it functioned as instant liquidity. An influx of gold from a new rush did not lower the price of gold. Instead, it gradually raised the prices of everything else as more money entered the system. This made gold the ultimate frontier fuel. It drove men into the most inhospitable corners of the Arctic and the desert because they knew that the metal they pulled from the frozen muck was effectively pre-minted international power. The market for gold was not a place of trade, but a place of transformation, where the raw grit of the earth was instantly crystallized into the legal tender of civilization.